I moved into the apartment on a damp, gray Sunday. It wasn't much, just a single bedroom unit on the second floor of an aging building. The wallpaper peeled slightly in the corners, and the floorboards groaned under the weight of even the lightest steps. But it was mine. Finally, I had my own space. After years of dormitory life and sharing rooms, this felt like a milestone. Independence, I told myself. A fresh start. The days slipped into a routine. Early mornings were spent rushing off to campus for lectures, evenings filled with the hum of the kettle and the scent of instant noodles. I lived alone, but the apartment was never quiet. The neighboring unit had a tenant I rarely saw but often heard. Daniel, I think his name was. Or maybe David. He introduced himself casually one evening when I was carrying groceries up the stairs. His voice was soft, his appearance unremarkable. Neatly combed hair, glasses, polite smile. If he passed me on the street, I doubt I'd recognize him. Our interactions were brief. A nod in the hallway, a muttered, "Hello." He carried the same neutral tone whether we crossed paths at noon or at midnight. There was something comforting about his presence, a steady rhythm to life in the building. The muffled sounds of his television or the occasional scrape of furniture reassured me that I wasn't alone. It wasn't friendship, not even close, but I valued the thin, familiar thread that tied us as neighbors. Then came the first oddity. One night, as I lay in bed scrolling through my phone, I heard the faint scrape of furniture on the floor, a sound so specific and deliberate that I held my breath to listen closer. It came from his unit, directly on the other side of my bedroom wall. The noise ceased after a few minutes, but my mind lingered on it. Was he rearranging furniture in the middle of the night? It seemed strange, but I dismissed it. 2 weeks into my stay, I faced my first real problem. I locked myself out of my apartment. It wasn't the end of the world, but at the time, it felt catastrophic. My keys were sitting smugly on the kitchen counter, taunting me through the locked door. Juggling my bag and textbook, I decided to knock on Daniel's door for help. 3 short taps echoed through the hallway. I waited. No footsteps, no sound. I knocked again, harder this time. That's when the door creaked open. The door creaked open just enough to reveal darkness, not the familiar kind that comes with drawn curtains or a power outage, but something thicker. It felt alive somehow, as if it were swallowing the light from the hallway. My first instinct was to apologize. Maybe Daniel had forgotten to lock it. "Hello? Daniel?" My voice wavered, too loud in the silent corridor. I stood there, my knuckles still hovering midair, debating whether to push the door further or step away. There were no sounds from inside, no shuffling, no hesitant footsteps responding to my call. The apartment exhaled a cold, damp draft that made the hairs on my arms stand up. Curiosity got the better of me. I nudged the door open a little wider. The dim light from the hallway spilled onto worn, scuffed floors, exposing nothing but emptiness. No furniture, no personal belongings, no sign of life. Just a barren space with peeling paint and cobwebs tangled in the corners. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my chest. It didn't make sense. I'd heard his television, felt its faint vibrations through our shared wall just last night. I'd spoken to him. He existed, didn't he? A sharp creak from somewhere behind me jolted me out of my thoughts. I spun around, my heartbeat slamming in my ears. The hallway was empty. My door, still locked, mocked me from across the hall. It took every ounce of willpower not to slam Daniel's door shut and bolt to the stairs. Instead, I eased his door back into its frame, letting the latch click softly into place. My hands were clammy, and the textbook tucked under my arm felt like it weighed 100 pounds. I all but sprinted to the landlord's office on the ground floor. He was there, hunched over a pile of paperwork in the small, cluttered room that smelled faintly of old coffee and mildew. "Hey, sorry to bother you," I stammered, trying to sound casual, though my voice betrayed the edge of panic. The guy in 206, Daniel, did he move out? His place looks empty? The landlord frowned, adjusting his glasses as he glanced up. 206. That unit's been vacant for over a year. No one's rented it since the last tenant left. I stared at him, waiting for a laugh or a smirk that never came. The room felt too warm, suffocating. But I've seen him, I insisted. I've talked to him. He's right there. The landlord's expression didn't change. You must be mistaken. I didn't go back upstairs immediately. The landlord's words sank into me, heavy and clinging like wet clothes, vacant. Over a year, it didn't add up. I'd greeted Daniel just yesterday on my way out. Heard the hum of his TV through the wall that very night. Back in my apartment, everything felt off. The air was stale, thick with unease. My mind raced, replaying every encounter with my neighbor, every passing nod, every polite greeting. They were all vivid, clear, and undeniable. So why did the landlord insist the unit was empty? I didn't want to ask more questions, but I couldn't stop myself. At around 3 a.m, I remembered the building's security app. Residents could access footage from the hallway cameras. It was meant for convenience, a way to check who was knocking on your door or monitor deliveries. But now, the thought of it made my stomach churn. I opened the app, scrolling back to the footage from earlier that day. It wasn't easy to find. I wasn't sure when exactly I knocked on Daniel's door, but after minutes of hunting, I finally landed on the timestamp. The video played in grainy, muted resolution. There I was, fidgeting with my bag and tapping on the door. The hallway was quiet, empty except for me. I watched as my hand reached out to knock, then waited, then knocked again. In the footage, I looked nervous but calm. But here's what sent the cold shock through my chest. I was alone. No door creaked open. No one stepped out to greet me. No one, nothing, responded to my knocking. Even stranger, the footage showed me speaking. My lips moved, shaping polite words, smiling, nodding. But to the camera, I was talking to thin air. I replayed it, over and over again, trying to make sense of what I saw. My heartbeat pounded so loudly I thought it might burst. I hadn't imagined Daniel, had I? My mind had never betrayed me this way before. And yet, the evidence was undeniable. The security footage didn't lie. Then I thought of the landlord's words, vacant, over a year. The application, the footage. Everything pointed to the same terrifying truth. Daniel wasn't real. Or at least, he wasn't what I thought he was. He wasn't a quiet neighbor. He wasn't someone I'd nodded to in the hallway, and he certainly wasn't someone I'd heard through the walls. As I shut the app, the faint scrape of furniture echoed through my bedroom wall again. I froze. I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone.